Saudi Arabia's de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, has reportedly been urging President Trump to continue the war against Iran. That's according to the New York Times, citing people briefed by U.S. officials. The report says Prince Mohammed argued that the U.S.-Israeli military campaign presented what he called a historic opportunity to remake the Middle East, and that Iran's government should be pushed toward collapse. Saudi officials deny that account, saying the kingdom supports a peaceful resolution and is focused on defending itself from Iranian attacks. Now, the report comes as Iranian strikes have hit Saudi oil infrastructure, raising concerns about the economic and security risks of a prolonged conflict. Let's bring in Mehrzad Boroujerdi. He's the vice provost at Missouri University of Science and Technology and a leading scholar of Iranian politics and foreign policy. Mehrzad, welcome to the day. It's great to have you on the show. Let's start with the basics here. Why would Saudi Arabia be interested in the U.S. ramping up attacks on Iran?
Well, as we know, these two countries have been arch rivals since the 1979 revolution. Back in 2008, King Abdullah, who was the current crown prince's paternal uncle, he was reported to have told the American political establishment to cut off the head of the snake, referring to, of course, to the Iranian government. The two countries, forged a rapprochement in 2023, thanks to the efforts of the Chinese. But this conflict really has not gone anywhere. Saudi Arabia has been urging the U.S. to ramp up attacks on Iran as they are coming under attack from Iranian drones. And we remember back in 2019, an Iranian missile attack on Saudi oil facilities really caused major damage for the Saudis. So it seems to me that they are seeing a repeat of that scenario. And based on the principle of rent a superpower, the idea is that you allow the U.S. to do the dirty work for you.
What would a new regional order to MBS's liking look like if he really sees this as a historic opportunity?
Well, imagine for the Saudis, if they do not have to deal with an arch rival like Iran that has tried to undermine their policies in neighboring states such as Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, Gaza, etc. This really presents MBS with an opportunity to try to increase Saudi Arabia's influence throughout the Middle East.
How do you think the war and the way it's being conducted are being perceived by Saudi leadership, though?
Well, I think, no love is lost, right, for Iran in Riyadh. And, of course, seeing the Iran having its nose bloodied is welcome news in Riyadh. But, apparently from what we are hearing is that, this is not enough. What they are asking is really encouraging the United States to use ground forces to try to topple the regime, which is, a position that is very close to that of the, Israelis in terms of, getting rid of the Islamic Republic as a whole.
Yeah, but things as they stand right now, there's chaos in the region. There's no clear exit strategy. How does Riyadh feel about that?
Yeah, so I think, they are, of course, also worried about, the possible scenario of Iran becoming, a failed state next door to them. That is not a pleasant scenario for them either. Why? Because A, you're talking about a vast country of 92 million people. So you can imagine the flood of refugees that is going to go, in every direction. You can imagine the political chaos. Keep in mind that 10 to 15% of the entire population of Saudi Arabia are Shiites that are concentrated in the eastern part of the country. And of course, Iran can cause mischief among the Shiite population of Saudi Arabia if there is a conflict between the two states. Furthermore, imagine again if all the gloves come out, right? How Iran can try to reverse and undermine some of the political successes that the Saudis have managed to gain over the last few years in places like Syria or Iraq. Furthermore, The Saudis are also worried about, another remaining, a wild card in this whole conflict. And that is the entry of the Houthis into this conflict, for which, they have been involved, as we know, in a war since 2015. Things have died down a bit, over the last few years, but there is always the possibility, and we are beginning to see such threats being articulated by the Houthi leadership that, we can get involved in this conflict as well.
Yeah. So a lot to be nervous about on the part of MBS. How does his position in that regard differ from the position held in Israel, especially when it comes to the prospect of Iran possibly becoming a failed state?
Right. So I think, for the Israelis, a failed state in Iran, actually, it might be a good outcome, a good scenario for them. They are further away from Iran. They consider Iran as an existential threat, et cetera, and therefore, disintegration of Iran or a regime change is the ultimate scenario that I think Mr. Netanyahu is pursuing. For the Saudis, being geographically closer to Iran, and as I said already, the danger of a failed state in Iran is worrisome to them. Keep in mind again that much of the Saudi wealth is generated by, shipping oil, right, through these Persian Gulf, etc. And therefore, a political chaos in Iran can come back to hit them in their pocketbooks.
You said that there was an approach of rent a superpower. Does that go both ways? Does the U.S. maybe also have an approach of rent a monarch? Because Donald Trump has called MBS a warrior and said that he is fighting with us. I'm quoting him here. Any idea what he means by that?
Well, I think what he's really referring to is that, again, based on the reporting we are seeing, apparently MBS behind the scene is really quite gung-ho and encouraging, Trump to go on here. Yes, absolutely. I think this is a dialectical relationship between the two. We know that, it has been a Saudi policy to open up their, pocketbooks, and try to appease the White House of Mr. Trump by, financing various projects in the United States, etc., buying billions of dollars of armaments from the United States in this regard. So the Saudis use that card for leverage as best as they can. But look, they're also in this awkward position, meaning that, for the longest time, not just the Saudis, but all the smaller states of the Persian Gulf, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, etc., they have all counted on this protection of a U.S. military umbrella, right? But now we are beginning to see that this defensive umbrella is not really what it was, portrayed to be. This war already has impacted 14 different countries in the region. And therefore, the question now is that once the guns fall silent, right, the question is, what is going to best secure the security of these states for the long term? Yeah. And it seems to me that they do not have too many patrons besides the United States to back them up.
Yeah, and I have one last question to you because, the Saudis' reputation, security, and economy is at stake here. Briefly, if you can, do you see them getting directly involved at some stage?
As of right now, I don't think so. As I said, I think, the prospect of Houthis entering the war is troublesome for them. And, if the reporting that we are hearing is correct, and again, Secretary Rubio today was talking about this war lasting weeks rather than months, right? So the Saudis have to be worried about the President Trump declaring victory and leaving, right? And if they get involved in this war, next door neighbor, physically is not going to go away. And they have to deal with the challenge of Iran for years and years to come.
Mehrzad Boroujerdi, Vice Provost at Missouri University of Science and Technology. Thank you so much. Fascinating speaking to you today.
Thank you.